A mother chained to a shed, her abusers sentenced to prison, but Chinese internet users are outraged. Why? Because the charges are not enough. Welcome to China Insider, I'm David Zhang. This is the chained mother of 8. Last year, around the Beijing Olympics, a vlogger captures her chained up in a shed in eastern China. After investigations by internet sleuths, it turns out that she was trafficked to a rural village and raped by multiple people, and then she was forced to stay with a man and give birth to 8 children. Now her abusers, including her alleged husband, Dong Ximin, are going to prison. However, internet users are outraged at the length of the sentence, saying it was too short for what they did to her, and upon researching the charges and learning about the story more, it seems they aren't even the proper charges. On top of that, this crime was covered up by local CCP officials and police, yet no officials in even the rural village received any punishment for allowing this crime to take place. Let's talk about the sentencing first. Now, there are multiple things wrong with the sentencing. Dong, who is the husband, received a total of 9 years for abuse and for illegal detainment charges, with no mention of rape in the court's decisions, and no charges for engaging in the buying part of the human trafficking. The chained mother was captured on video calling the people in the house, quote, "they're all rapists," and it is widely believed that this is a case for rape victims being trafficked to these rural areas. And in fact, there is a 2007 film called Blind Mountain that highlights how girls are trafficked to these rural areas and they're forced to marry 2 men, and then often they're raped and forced to bear the child. And I suggest that you watch it if you're interested. Now, the other 5 co-conspirators in this case received prison terms for human trafficking and are fined. First, people are outraged that no rape charges were filed against any of them, and that would actually add an additional 3 to 10 years in prison. And last year, it was discovered that the chained mother was likely raped by multiple people, including the village head and relatives of the alleged husband. Now, it could actually be that her 8 children, some of them are not even from her husband. And second, the statute of limitation on human trafficking in China is about 20 years if the case is very severe. And of course, this case took place in 1998, according to CCP officials, and this means that even if charges were laid last year, it's been more than 20 years. So technically, the 5 co-conspirators shouldn't even be charged. Now, the reason that these 5 were charged is that, according to the court file, quote, "proved by the Supreme People's Procuratorate to be prosecuted for the crime of trafficking women." In other words, the charges were an exception to the statute of limitation, and solely because, again, according to the Chinese law, the case is extremely important, as this was the special prosecutor granted the charges. But again, that's the very confusing part about this. According to Chinese law, if the circumstances are particularly serious, then it could actually go up to death penalty with confiscation of property too. Which means if this case is as serious as they make it out to be, allowing it to be charged even after the 20 years, shouldn't the charges be much higher, the sentencing be much worse? And of course, clearly the laws under the CCP, as we know it, are pretty malleable. They're as malleable as a piece of dough, molded into whatever to fit the circumstance, whatever the case they want it to be. So this seems like a contradiction. But we also have to consider that this is the Chinese Communist Party, so the judicial system is always in the hands of the CCP official. And third, abuse charges of the husband, Dong, is also not enough. The abuse charge means that they're considered legally marriage. Millions of rape victims and human trafficked women in China have just been told by the court a human trafficking victim was raped and then forced to marry her husband, then they now only gets charged with abuse instead of the rape charges. From the original footage that gained the national and even international attention, of course, the public sympathy for the shocking conditions that the woman was found living in, she had her teeth all plucked out, her tongue cut to avoid her to speak out about her experience, and there was also, of course, the beating, the chaining, the starvation, and much more and much worse. For these parts, no charges were actually laid. Now, the question becomes, who is the chained mother? And according to the claims of the Chinese officials, her name is Xiao Huamei, or Little Plum Flower. But the identity of her is actually disputed because the version widely believed by internet sleuths and investigative reporters who actually traveled to meet the parents of the kidnapped believes that she is a girl named Li Ying. For now, let's just go with the official narrative. Well, according to the narrative, the victim's plight began in 1998 when she was deceived into leaving her hometown in the southwestern province of Yunnan by Shi Lizhong and Sang Heniu. That's a couple who sold Little Plum Flower to a farmer in Jiangsu province for about 5,000 yuan, or about $727. She lived with the farmer for several months before going missing in May of 1998. She was found some months later, wandering in a restaurant in the central province of Henan by another trafficker, Ta Naiqing, and then sold on to two more traffickers. Names are Hong Yongchu and Huo Fude, for about 3,000 yuan. When she landed with Deng, her current husband, her abuse began. And according to different sources, she was raped by multiple people. Some were relatives of Deng. And it's unclear if all 8 of her children are actually with Deng and if any of them were consented. It is believed that Deng fabricated his marriage to the chained mother. And according to an investigative reporter who actually went to visit the alleged parents of the chained mother, the photos that they show don't look alike with each other. And it seems that when a photo of Li Ying started to circulate online and that side-by-side comparison happened, the likeness of the two seems much more than that of the previous two pair. And then she was also compared to the mother and father of Li Ying, and again the resemblance is there. That reporter has since escaped China after being pressured by authorities. He outlined the following questions about the chained mother. First, he says they labeled the chained mother as mentally unstable and sent her to a mental hospital for treatment. But in the original video, we clearly see that she's able to speak, although unable to understand her because of her oral injuries, no teeth and a broken tongue. Also, it seems like she wasn't speaking a recognizable language, or some believe that she was speaking in a dialect, where, of course, the CCP claims not where she is from. To this day, the woman in chain has not been freed, and she continues to be confined by Deng Zhimin's chains, and now her whereabouts are still unknown. She could still be shackled somewhere. And last year, the investigation team in the province allegedly took DNA samples of items belonging to Li Ying, Little Plum, and also the chained mothers, and then concluded that the DNA matched the Little Plum flower. But again, the reporter questions the process. He also says if the sentence pronounced by the court and police is true, why was the victim's family not notified to appear in court? And why did Little Plum's sister and Little Plum's uncle disappear from the internet? And of course, no reporter could approach to investigate the situation. And he asked that what is the reason why the victim's immediate family could not testify in court, and also why the chained mother was not there. And lastly, he says, of course, there's this whole event tying to multiple problems, including human trafficking, the protection by the government to protect the rapists and kidnappers, and we also have the lack of transparency in the whole judicial system, and of course the silencing of victims. But these are actually the normal ways in which the CCP conducts legal matters, since the court, the judge, lawyers, police officers, they all listen to the party, so really the system is rigged against the victim. For the CCP, maintaining the chained mother as Little Plum flower carries significant political meanings too. Last year, it was around the time of the Beijing Winter Olympics, and this is when the TikTok video exploded on the internet. The officials kept suppressing the event to avoid generating too much public opinion about this instead of the Beijing Olympics. And they launched 4 investigations at the time, starting with the investigation from the local level all the way up to the provincial level. And every single investigation contradicted the previous one. In the end, they stuck with the narrative that Little Plum flower was kidnapped and trafficked to this local rural area. But last year, I actually did an extensive report for my old China Insider show, so I'll play a bit of the footage. China's imbalance of male-to-female ratio is also the result of government policy under the Chinese Communist Party's one-child policy. It artificially created a culture to value male-born because of the labor value as it provides, and yet over the decades the one-child policy has been around, there exists a large number of discrepancy between the male population who are unable to find a wife, 34 million to be exact in China, and such case contributes to the rampant human trafficking of girls. Yet it is not the whole picture. This is not a legal arena in China. Human trafficking is outlawed in China. Yet at the country or city level, officials are not active in stopping the trafficking. You get less jail time for trafficking or for buying exotic animals or plants than you do for trafficking humans. This is also not a case of men against women by itself. The reason is, as we've just indicated, China's use of mass forced labor is often a male-based focus. And those labor camps are connected to work on projects at a very low or no pay. So what do we define this as then? Well, we can clearly see this as a violation of human rights in China, one of the many common ones we hear nowadays. And Chinese authorities are desperately suppressing the domestic voice on the chained mother. 2 independent investigators went to see the chained mother recently, but they were detained by the police, and one was beaten. On her social media, she details being hit by an unknown person while she was interrogated, and she suffered injuries and bruises on her face, neck, head, and elbow. Meanwhile, on Weibo, China's Twitter,
The internet censorship is minimizing the discussion of this topic. When reporters also attempted to enter the village in which the chained mother is allegedly being held, the local police have not only blocked access, citing COVID prevention, but they've also blocked all of the entryways. Here's a video. I'll provide the rough translation here. In the video filmed by the reporter attempting to get into the village, at around 43 seconds in, the police tells him that the car cannot enter due to COVID measures. About 1 minute and 12 seconds in here, the reporter says that the requirement for entering the village, which again was just a negative COVID test, which the team prepared ahead of time, and at 1 minute 25 seconds, they're now heading to another path into the village. At 2 minutes, the guard prevents them access again, even as he has a negative COVID test. The reporter, who was beaten by the police, posted to her social media saying the following, quote, "This incident arresting me has destroyed my psyche, almost activating my full self-defense mode. It has also destroyed my worldview. I was always believing that what my country educated me on all turned out into a lie, like a sword thrusting into my body." She goes on to question if the police are even working for the people here. Now, you might be asking at this point, why is the government and the police shutting down the village? Well, the simple answer is that this event has shaken up the public opinion of the government and public service in China. It seems at the moment people are not shutting up about this event, this chained mother, the victim, and how she is being represented. The Chinese Communist Party loves stability, and this is very much unstable. And the case is only getting worse because sleuth and citizen journalists are probing on it. Like the early days of the Wuhan lockdown, the citizen journalists are being attacked, jailed, or kidnapped for trying to find the truth about the origin of the virus. And authorities are using the excuse that every country has kidnapping and human trafficking to deflect from their responsibility in this event. Now, while we may see more international pressure, it's already a lie to compare a systemic problem in China to the rest of the world. China's way of deflecting is by saying that, well, look, the US is the same problem. Quote, "closely related to the willful ignorance and inaction of the US government." And that was said by Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhang last year. This is simply not true. China is listed as a Tier 3 nation, which means the governments are not sufficiently complying with the minimum anti-trafficking standards and are not making any significant efforts to do so. The local police are often not protecting the victims either. And so on paper they would, but their first instinct seems to be in practice to block citizen reporters from even going into the village to try to reveal some. Or perhaps the Chinese government just decides to censor online discussions. That doesn't build confidence at all. The question is, does China ever investigate these human trafficking cases? Well, they say they do, but the results vary. According to a documentary report titled Abducted for 6 Years, which was published by Southern Weekend in 2001, that's a Chinese media, in 1994, a 14-year-old girl from Beijing was drugged and abducted to a rural area in another province on her way to school. She finally escaped after 6 years. She was raped 3 days after she was bought, and a week later, she was arranged to a photograph and to be married. She was only 14 and a half years old when she was raped, while her husband, quote-unquote, who bought her was already in his 30s. And soon after the photos were taken, the man's old aunt, who was the village's Communist Party branch secretary, sent a new account book and a marriage certificate to her. The names and ages on all of these documents were fake, but the official seal was real. Right now, with the chained mother, the officials are using 2 DNA tests to prove that the chained mother is not a victim of human trafficking from another identified victim. But that's the case as many online question if the officials are even making a correct DNA test.
Now, I like this New York Times report because it actually mentions an important aspect of the story. The Chinese government faces a quandary, which is how to convince its people that what it said about a chained woman is true. And the events of the chained mother broke many of the Chinese people's comprehension of how bad the regime could be, that even a mother suffering could not be saved. Subsequently, many other photos and videos began to surface about different horrible treatment of women in China. And the public thought that it couldn't trust a government that was not truthful about her identity and that was acquiescent when it comes to forced marriages involving human trafficking. Now, on Chinese social media, users dug up a marriage certificate with a photo of a woman who was identified by the government as the chained mother, but looked different from her. And they dove into court documents that showed the region where she lived had a dark history of human trafficking. Even long-retired investigative journalists traveled to a deep village deep in the mountains, knocking on each door to verify the government's claim that she grew up there. And according to one internet sleuth, quote, "It forced us to become detectives, analysts, AI image in painting technicians, data mining engineers, and even Sherlock Holmes." For many in China, the story is the most destructive to the narrative of the CCP. Last year, 3 Chinese women from China made headlines. Tennis star Peng Shuai, the sexual assault victim, silenced. Eileen Gu, the skier who claims her allegiance to China and enjoys harvesting wealth from both US and Chinese sponsors. And of course, the chained mother, who many say actually truly represents the state of the country. Prompting to many online commenting, each person in China is a chained woman, forced to pay for their survival with blood and sweat, to have children, to be abandoned by society, to be abused by the regime. All right, that's the story update of the chained mother. Her abusers have been sentenced to 9 years in prison, and various co-conspirators also sentenced to prison charges. But then again, because the sentencing didn't match with the abuse, many people online are angry at what happened. All right, this is China Insider. I'm David Zhang. If you enjoy the content so far, make sure to subscribe to our channel and comment below what your thoughts are on the topic today. Also, like this video to help us make it reach the YouTube algorithm so it can be recommended to more people. Once again, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.